What's up, everybody? And welcome in to another edition of Big Men on Basketball. It is Thursday, January 19th, 2023. I hope you're all having a great day wherever you are. As always, we are here Monday through Friday on the Barstool Sports YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jeff Nadu, and we are back. Jim Root is back. Didn't see him last week, but he's here this week. Jim Root, three-man weave. How are you? Nice to see you. How's everything going, bro?
Yeah, it's good. Good to be back. Apologies for missing last week. Just enough came up that I wasn't able to make it happen. But we're back here. We're getting into the nitty gritty of it. The college football fans are joining us, and
Yes.
Here we go, man. It's college basketball's time to shine.
Yeah, this is our time, right? You know, it really kind of starts on New Year's Day, right? Once football kind of ends, it's basketball. You get the NFL playoffs still kind of going on, which will continue to kick off this week. But I want to talk about last night because you and I were talking before the show about Oklahoma. And, you know, it was just one of those second halves, man. Oklahoma State seemed like they couldn't miss in the second half. You know, I don't know if they scored 48 points and a half this season.
Why not?
And they do it last night against Porter Moser in Oklahoma. Just a rough second half for the Sooners. You know, a good road team, a team that had been solid on the road. I don't really mind that. Oklahoma State just, you know, whether it was Boone or whoever, they couldn't miss in the second half.
Yeah, and it seemed like the games they played without Cisse, they had struggled late and trying to create shots. And you know, think of him as like a great shot blocker and rebounder, but he'd hurt their offense. Not having him as like a dunking threat on pick and rolls and stuff, that had limited some of the spacing and didn't matter yesterday. I was very shocked at that second half. I can't believe they scored 48 and a half. That is like eye-popping to me. But, you know, unfortunately, we got to deal with these outlier results here and there.
Yeah, it ended up bothering me too because I had, as I told you, I had Missouri, and they ended up coming back, which was nice. That was a nice second half for them. You know, at least the last 10 minutes, they really kind of put it all together. They hit some big shots. I have to ask you, what were your thoughts on that egregious foul that was called? That everyone was up in arms about. That was a hideous call, wasn't it?
Yeah, a pretty bad call. I will say it was a very tightly called game the entire contest, so I wasn't surprised that a little nudge ended up a foul there. I think the part lost in all this is that he missed the N1 free throw. It didn't matter. It's still a tie game afterwards, so there was no real difference in that foul being called versus not. I guess Mitchell fouled out later on a fifth foul, or I can't remember if that was his fifth. And then that possession when they were down to Jalen Graham was the one that fumbled it away. If that's Mitchell instead, because he doesn't get that foul, maybe that's different. But the fact that he missed the free throw kind of negates, like, it didn't really affect the outcome.
Yeah. Well, tonight, as we know, Thursday's usually kind of mid-major night. A lot of CAA, a lot of WCC, a lot of Summit League. But we do have some big-time Big 10 games tonight. No Big 12 or Big East or anything. But I do want to point out, big win last night for DePaul. That was a solid win for that group. You know, again, I feel like, you know, anytime we feel like a team is figuring itself out, they just don't figure it out, right? I mean, let me ask you, Jim, I guess Houston's probably what, your number one team in the country, right?
Yep.
Outside of Houston, is Kansas the second best team to you?
They might be, but they're not that great against the spread. They don't blow teams out at all, especially at home. They've just been kind of skating by and winning.
Can I throw a team?
I have one. I'm curious if it's the same one.
I think it is. Is it UCLA?
They're 2 or 3 with Alabama. I think those are my 1, 2, 3.
It pains me because I'm not a Nate Oates guy, but I have to give them credit. I said, I think it might have been on here. I kind of said, like, are they ever going to lose again? Seems like every situation that seems like they're going to lose in, they find a way to win. You know, I thought the situation the other night was a bit precarious, obviously off the court, but I liked it even, you know, without that situation. You know, I just thought it was a good spot as a double-digit favorite to kind of go against what they were doing. And, you know, they just continue to answer the call. But I mentioned yesterday, I think UCLA is as a complete team in the country as we have. I think they're built to last too. This is going to be a great Final Four type of team that can run the table. They're older. They have a great coach. They've been there before. I think in the market, if you could still get above 10-1 on them, that's a great price. I've gotten a better price. I played 16-1 on them, but I think they're as good as it gets.
Yeah, and the Pac-12 is kind of vulnerable. You look at the KenPom projections; they're supposed to win that league by 5 games. Like that's how far they've cleared. I mean, Arizona's lost some surprising ones. UCLA could end up doing the same thing. At one point, UConn was projected to win the Big East by like 3 games, and look where they are now. But UCLA just has the perfect kind of makeup for a postseason run. They can run, play up tempo, or they can play in the half court. They've got a go-to one-on-one scorer in Jaquez. They've got a senior point guard that controls everything in Campbell. He's been there before. Both those guys have played in the Final Four. Cronin's a great coach. And they've got the young talent in Amari Bailey and Adam Bona that could blossom and add an extra gear to the team. So, like, you've got this great floor with the senior talent, and then the freshmen offer a little bit more, and that's not even mentioning Jalen Clark, who might be like the best defender in the country. So that team is really, really loaded, and maybe we forget about them because they're out on the West Coast.
We're going to get into this card in a second. I did want to mention one other thing. UConn loses again. You made a point, I think it was you guys yesterday, about do we actually trust their guard play? And I think it was a very astute point. Does it seem like going out and getting kids from USD and places like that, maybe that's not going to translate when it matters most?
Yeah, I thought when they were dominating early, I was like, okay, Hurley did a smart thing, getting a bunch of these guards and hoping that 2 of the 4 would be standout guys. And they were so dominant in the paint, and they were making threes. It really didn't matter. But now we're seeing in familiar opponents that are game planning for them, they don't have anyone that can create their own shot outside of Hawkins can get like an 18-footer when you need it, but that's not a hyper-efficient way to offense. You can't always feed the big man. You need a guard to create it sometimes. And Tristan Newton's not doing that. Hassan Diarra is not doing that. Calcaterra is not. It is a limiting factor for them. That's why they turned it over 21 times against St. John's at home, 18 times last night at Seton Hall. They've got issues in the backcourt for sure.
I talked about that yesterday. It was one of the reasons I leaned Hall in that game. Let's get into today's card. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As always, if you have a question, we'll get to a few at the end. Somebody says Charleston's going to win by 50 tonight. I'm willing to bet that doesn't happen. But that said, I mean, that's a really interesting conference down there. A couple of good basketball teams out of that group in the CAA. Yeah, they haven't lost since November 11th. And again, Monmouth's really bad. I'll go 30. I think they win by 30.
Yeah, I buy that too. The team that likes to play up tempo in Charleston against Monmouth's one of the worst offenses in the country. I think it's going to be a blowout.
Let's get into this card. I want to start in the CAA. Hofstra is hosting the UNC Wilmington Seahawks, who, last couple of years have been a pretty good bet against the number. They had a good start to the season as well. Total here is 139.5. But I think the thing about Hofstra that I'm always interested in is the pick and roll offense. Aaron Estrada and Dunbar just so good in that offense under Speedy Claxton. This is one of the better offenses that nobody really talks about. You look at, again, in CAA play, top 2, got the number 1 2-point offense, and they're off a slog, a game they just didn't play very well in on Monday against Towson University on MLK Day. But this seems to me like a bit of a bounce back here. You look at both these games last year, pretty interesting. The one they lost 78-72, and they won the other one 73-71. I see a total here at 139.5. I kind of feel like the games are no similar than last year. I think both these teams get into the 70s. I know Hofstra will score pretty efficiently. UNC Wilmington, they're always pretty guard-oriented. Been I guess you could say, solid offense. They get to the free throw line and make their free throws. And that's the thing about these two teams. Two really good from the line teams. If you get just a normally fouled game here, a normally officiated game, I think this game finds its way over the posted total. Any thoughts here? Hofstra, maybe this looks, a little high, but maybe for a reason. Any thoughts here on this one?
Yeah, that's what I thought with the spread. I was like, I make this a little lower, all things equal. But digging in, Wilmington's, they lost 2 of 3. They didn't cover the one they won in that group, and they've had some real injuries. I've talked about Noah Ross, the shooter for them. He's missed, I think, the last 2 games now. Without him, they are really restricted on the floor. They don't have a lot of spacing. He's the one of 2 players on the team that's made over 23s. They don't take a lot of them. Without him, I think they've struggled to get that offense going. Now, against Hofstra's defense that's sort of non-existent. They probably find a way. But with Hofstra coming off, they were 4 for 27 from 3 on Monday. You're talking about that game against Towson. They're way too good to shoot that poorly again. I think you see a big bounce back offensive performance for Hofstra, and my gut just kind of said the Pride get a big bounce back here and hopefully for you score a ton of points. Give them 90, put 90 up there.
5 straight games in this series have gone into the 140s. Last time they didn't get into the 140s, January of 2020. So a while. It's been a while. These teams, they generally kind of complement each other, both pretty guard oriented generally. And one thing that we forget about, keep in mind last year, UNCW doesn't have Okuru anymore, that big kid down low. That kind of maybe negates the ability to get into negated the ability to get into the paint. I like Hofstra. I trust their offense. I like both these offenses. I think it finds a way to get into the 140s. Maryland and Michigan. We all know Hunter Dickinson plays very well against Maryland. They just were a mess the last time these two teams played. Are you ready to just assume that a change of venue is going to fix these things? I feel like Michigan has figured it out a bit. I have heard through the grapevine that Maryland might be dealing with some flu issues right now. And again, I've been pretty happy of what I've seen out of Doug and Doug McDaniel and some of the guards at Michigan. I didn't get there with this one. I kind of lean Michigan. I don't like road teams, and I know how good home court advantage is in the Big Ten. Did you have a read on this game?
No, I had a hard time with this. It's one of those, I see a lot of things in both directions, which ultimately has me sitting out. I think the Hunter Dickinson thing versus Maryland is very real. Someone in the chat mentioned he holds a grudge for not recruiting him. Yeah, he's a DMV guy. Why would Maryland not go after a dominant big man coming out of, I think he was DeMatha. He might not be DeMatha.
Yep,
but
DeMatha.
Okay, yeah, it just seems obvious. You should be going after those guys. So I get it, and he's been fantastic against them. Probably will be again tonight. Maryland might be limited in the front court. You mentioned the flu. I think Dante Scott's been practicing through it, but sounds like he could be definitely under the weather. And we'll see if Julian Reese is able to hold up in big minutes against Dickinson. That first game was such an immediate slaughter that I don't know how much to take from it. Maryland couldn't score in the half court. It was New Year's Day. Was Maryland out partying in Ann Arbor? Who knows? But I do expect a better effort from Maryland. I don't think it's going to be any sort of blowout like that. But I couldn't figure out how to slice this one and come up with a play, so I sat it out.
Yeah, same. Maryland is a team. Remember, if they have certain people out or they're not at full capacity to play, they're not a real deep team. So that's kind of a bit concerning here. And, maybe if you're a prop guy, maybe you look towards a prop here with Hunter, maybe. I mean, he's had a good go of it against this team recently. Every game is important for both these teams, but College Park, it's kind of a different level of a home court advantage. All the students are back, so just something to keep an eye on. Tough game. I didn't ultimately get there with this one. If I had to play it, I'd lean Michigan, but as Jim said, I'm going to sit this one out. One I'm not going to sit out in is this one. Look, I'll take 6.5 with Indiana. I know it's not, first of all, easy to back them, and it's actually not easy in general to back them on the road. They have been just not very good away from home. However, I look at Illinois, and I see, to me, just an inconsistent team a lot of the time. I feel like Indiana playing smaller has helped them a little bit. Hood Schifino is starting to get his way with himself a little bit. We obviously know they likely have the best player on the court here in Trace Jackson Davis. It struck me just as a bit high, Jim. If this is 4, probably not playing it. But if you're going to give me 6.5, I'll take the sharp side and a team that no one really wants to back right now in Indiana against a team in Illinois who's been good recently. They've gotten out of the inconsistent doldrums. I'm going to lean Indiana. I'm going to take them plus 6.5.
Yeah, as I went through, just like going through the lines for the day, I saw 6.5. I was like, whoa. I mean, imagine this preseason when everybody was raining love down on Indiana as the Big Ten favorite. Now there's different context now without Race Thompson, Xavier Johnson. They've kind of struggled to pivot from that and figure out what their rotations are. Like you said, playing more small ball with Geronimo at the 4, maybe that does help them. I do think Illinois has maybe turned a corner too, though. When Sky Clark stepped away from the team, they've now won 4 straight, won and covered 4 straight, and been rather impressive doing so. Now, there's been some circumstances as a part of that. Wisconsin was without Tyler Wall. Michigan State lost Malik Hall late in that game, and I think Nebraska was shorthanded as well. Juwan Gary got hurt during that game. So you can pick at that and maybe say it's not quite the revolution renaissance that we thought they were going through. But yeah, it just first instinct seemed a tad high. We'll see how it goes. We got Kai McEwen from 3-Man Weave in the house on this one.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And maybe he'll give me some good juju. I want to zero in on one player in this game. You mentioned Thompson and Johnson are out. There's a guy, Malik Renew. We saw him at the beginning of the season. Indiana won 5 straight games to start the season. In fact, I think they won more than 5. But there's an interesting thing about Renew. In the first 5 games, he averaged he had double figures in 4 of the 5. Then his minutes dropped off and we hadn't seen him. Recently, he's contributed a little bit. If Malik Renew gets to 10 points tonight, I think they win this game or hang around in this game. They need some of these kids like Bates and Renew to step up. You mentioned Geronimo. He's done a nice job. Hood Schifino will be relevant. TJD will be relevant. Miller Kopp, Trey Galloway. But you need something else. And Renew could be the guy, the freshman. So he's going to get a better role, a bigger role. I think if he can give you something in this game, kind of the way I look at in Michigan with Joey Baker. Sometimes if he can give you 12, 13, 15 points, that's the difference in some of these games. I need him to be a factor here off the bench.
He's
like
good, man. He's really good. Some of his Montverde tape was really impressive. I thought he's going to be a star right away. Kind of seems like he struggled to find his role, even with Thompson out. But if he's not awesome tonight, I will just forecasting a year down the road, he's an all-conference guy next year in the Big Ten. No question about it. He'll take over as the star big man for them for sure.
Obviously, Sky Clark gone. I will say I think a lot of the time when you see someone with negative energy leave, it's generally good. I was surprised Sky Clark went to Illinois, to be frank. That seemed like it was Kentucky. And then I see pops if he goes to Illinois. Didn't work. He moved on. It's probably better for the team that he's not there. And I'm sure they've kind of figured all that out. Jack Stone says Underwood over Woodson, and he's an Indiana guy. Yeah, look, I don't think there's anyone with a basketball brain that would say that Woodson's a better choice than Underwood. But Underwood's had some problems this year ringing this team in. So, I think it's just a close game. I don't think Indiana's that bad. I think they have the horses to hang in this game. So I'm going to rock with the Hoosiers plus 6.5 tonight. This is an interesting one. We always seem to talk West Kentucky, you and I, on this show. Now, I'm going to tell you, they have been in my good graces lately, and I'll tell you why. I had them against UAB. They won that game, but then immediately they got out of my good graces because I don't know if you saw this over the weekend. They played FAU. Okay, yep. Jim, with 2 minutes to go, they had 134 points in the game. Okay, the total was 139.5, I believe. It finished 76-62. Nobody scored, and it stayed under. It was a rough beat, really rough.
I had the over there, too. I was with you.
Okay, yeah, it was a rough one. That said, tonight, there's one role that Mr. Stansbury is very good in, and that's an underdog. They're 4-1 against the number as a dog this year. You're giving me 2 buckets here against La Tech, who I can't lie to you, don't do much for me. Just a decent middle of the road team in this conference. And I feel like if you're West Kentucky, this is kind of one you need to have, right? I mean, you're 3-4. It's not going to get a lot easier. This is a tough conference. This is not a vintage La Tech team. Eric Kunkel's gone. Kenneth Lofton's gone. Where is Kenneth Lofton, by the way?
Grizzlies G League team, I think.
Yeah. Wouldn't mind seeing him come back this year, but he may have transferred nonetheless with Conkle leaving. That said, I always believe, and maybe I'm crazy to say this, I think West Kentucky is one of the more talented teams in this conference. It's sometimes, though, that they play down a competition. Yeah. This is a game I don't think they do that in. They got to play hard. This is a game I could see him winning. Didn't get there with it, but it's an interesting game. Maybe I'll revisit it live or at halftime.
Yeah, I'm always, whenever I see the plus sign next to Western Kentucky, it's like, I should at least consider this, think about it, go through. Last year, Western Kentucky started 2-6 in the league. It's like, what's wrong with this talented team? And then they won 9 of 10 to end the season and finished 11-7. So like maybe they find that role again. The talent is certainly there. They got the dominant shot blocker inside. They've got a bunch of power conference down transfers. I know Acot's not playing or is potentially out again. He's missed a couple, but I still think that them as an underdog, I'm strongly considering backing the toppers there.
Okay, so you look at the last 5 games between these two teams. 1-5-7, 2-1. I believe something around those. They're very close, all of them. This is a better West Kentucky team than La Tech recently. To me, this number is, I mean, let me ask you, what do you give La Tech's home court? Do you really give it 3? I mean, maybe.
Not 3. Ruston's like weird to get to, but
right.
It's not something I'm like super panicked about.
To me, this number should be 2.5. If you're going to give me 4, I'm going to lean on WKU. But it's always with them, when you bet them, it's a mind fuck, if you will, because they do a lot of things that are very annoying. And without ACOT, they're not as strong. This is a quick one I wanted to bring up. This seemed a bit high to me. I like Memphis, but I don't have much problem betting against them. I bet against them on Sunday against Temple University, and Temple hung around, or that was Temple, wasn't it? I believe it was.
Yeah,
Temple.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, at Temple.
Can they win on a buzzer beater? Yeah. They don't do a lot for me. Wichita, is going to slow it down. Good defensive team under Isaac Brown. I didn't know about their 8 players available. What's that all about? Sick?
They've had some guys in and out. I guess it's still Womack, Hardaway, Dandridge. I think that probably does still hurt. I didn't know it was down to 8 though. That's bare bones.
Yeah, it's definitely moved. If you didn't get 10.5, I don't know where you're getting 10.5, but if you're still seeing that, rock with it. Someone saying Mike Bray's retiring at the end of the year, not fired. Well, I guess you had to come in here and tell me I was wrong. Listen, my source, very close to the team, told me he was being let go. I guess maybe they thought better of it and said, all right, we'll let him off. He's been here. How long has he been there? 20 years?
Yeah, I'm sure there was a discussion there.
Listen, the truth of the matter is Mike Bray, people are very unhappy in South Bend. It has gotten really bad there. I was contacted by someone very close to the team. They said Bray's getting the axe. It should happen in the next 2 days or 1 or 2 days. So, and as far as firing in midseason, I didn't think that was a big problem. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if they just said, hey, listen, we want to get rid of you. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I thought they might have just gotten rid of him and said, Anthony Solomon can do it. Solomon's an associate head coach. He could coach them. That said, he's gone, and they need to make a better hire there. All right. I want to get to one more game here. And this is a game I'm also going to recommend to bet. One of my favorite teams this year to bet on is Pacific. 7-3 is a dog. I don't really understand why San Francisco's laying double digits. It's not like this team's playing very well. Jim, they've been a mess defensively. I think if you have that little brother, big brother type of game here, the Pacific kind of in that area, San Francisco's a bit better, always a solid team in this conference, but they don't have that same luster now that Golden's gone. They're still a solid team. They've got some players, but 10.5 seemed too high to me, especially for a team that's not playing very well. And Pacific's been good to me. I've played them a lot this year. If you're going to give me double digits, I'm in.
Yeah, it's been grueling for San Francisco schedule-wise to start WCC play.
Yeah,
Gonzaga and St. Mary's, both just powerhouses, took care of them. I think the loss to Gonzaga when they got as close as they did hurt emotionally. I think it was just hard to get up for games after that. And now they're just coming off that suffocation against St. Mary's. Yeah, laying 10.5 does seem pretty stiff or steep. Pacific's talented. They just kind of run around and do some crazy stuff every once in a while, but they're talented enough to play up as an underdog. You mentioned the splits. I think that's real because of the talent level on that roster.
I'll also ask you, if I were to ask you who is the 4th best team in the WCC defensively, would you say it was Pacific? I believe
no
they
chance.
are.
There's no way.
Yeah.
I would never have guessed it.
Yeah, and they've actually, you look at their schedule. I mean, BYU, Santa Clara, Marymount, Pepperdine, San Diego. This is a good offensive conference. A lot of good teams offensively. So Yeah, listen, Leonard Perry's done a pretty good job there. If you're going to give me doubles, again, as many of you guys know, there are things that work for me in college hoops. You see a lot of the same teams. This team's been good to me. I like them. I think they can hang here, maybe 78, 73, 78, 70, something like that. If you're going to give me 10 and a half, I'm in. Now, I am worried about maybe this is just a get right, 78, 58 type of game. I'm hoping Pacific can do their thing, do what they normally do, and cover. So I'll take them on the road. I'll take them as a dog. Just my kind of spot here. Jim Root, I have to go to you. Highlight a game or two. Let me ask you about one that I was interested in. I really wanted to lay it tonight with Oakland, but then I also kind of say to myself, well, I know Oakland's been playing better and I think they're talented, but what was the excuse against I don't know, why'd you only beat Robert Morris by 4? What was that all about? I mean, is IUPUI just Loyola Chicago at this point?
They're close to it. I'll pitch you on Oakland first half because IUPUI does this most of the time, not every time. Like they lost by 35 to Cleveland State last game, but they'll hang around, and teams I think that play them are just like, this team's so bad, we can take our foot off the gas pedal. And so they backdoored a few games. That Robert Morris game, Purdue Fort Wayne, they did not cover first half and ended up covering full game. Wright State, Northern Kentucky, same way. I think teams put them away in the first half, and then they're just like, whatever, it's IUPUI. Let's move on to our next game. And IUPUI doesn't quit, to their credit. So I think first half would be a decent look there.
Yeah, and you probably look at this one. I mean, it's probably around, I don't know, 5.5, 6, something like that. I think that could be a really solid bet here. What about you? What's some that you've looked at?
I like Utah tonight hosting Washington State in the mountains. This, you mentioned get right a little bit with San Francisco. I think this is kind of get right for Utah. They've lost 3 in a row. Brandon Carlson's been out of the lineup. The 3 they've lost, though, were home to Oregon. All right, tough team, kind of a coin flip game there. Mm-hmm. And at UCLA, at USC. I'm not going to tear down the Utes for losing those 2 games, being a little bit banged up. Now back to elevation. You're telling me they're equal, basically, with Washington State, or even a little worse, depending on how much you're giving for home at that altitude. I'll take 3.5 there. I laid 3. I think 3.5 is still good with the Utes.
Let me ask you about one other one. This is like a really small game. It's off the beaten path. Who stops who in Queens, North Florida? I didn't really. I guess what I'm looking at here, and I like Queens, but it's like a couple road games in a row for North Florida. They're back at home. I mean, if they're going to win a game, it's at home. And I hate these 1-point spreads on the road. Seems like they always lose. This game kind of screamed first to 80 wins to me.
Yeah, North Florida is kind of been playing their zone. Some of it's man-to-man, but they're just lost on that end, regardless of what setup they're in. Not a ton of perimeter athletes, so you can drive by them. And Queen's whole thing is downhill off the bounce. Kenny Dye is a phenomenal point guard coming up from D2. Gets in the lane at will. He's going to get in the lane at will in this one. And then North Florida is the Birds of Trey. That's what they're known as. Tons of threes. So,
you're a stranger. You're a slave to the 3. Someone's also saying, why not just take the over in IUPUI? Because they don't score. They could score 52 points in that game. I have no interest. I just kind of want to side with Oakland, if anything. Also, this is a funny comment here. IUP's injured a few stars tonight. First of all, I don't think they have any stars. Second of all, I wouldn't know where to find it if they did. They don't exactly put injury reports out. What else? We'll do 1 or 2 more, and then we'll get Jim out of here. What about Michigan State against Rutgers? Michigan State's kind of figured it out. I had them the other night against Purdue. I was able to cash a ticket there as a plus money. Rutgers, they've started to kind of figure things out. This was kind of coin flippy to me.
Yeah, it's tough. It's that unranked home favorite against the ranked team, and I think a lot of people are just like, oh, let me bet those home teams. Like last night was West Virginia and Mizzou. They worked out. I believe that trend, if you want to call it, is 14-6 against the spread this year. Credit to my buddy Jared Smith for that stat. So if you want to ride it with the unranked home favorite with Michigan State, I get it. I just don't think they're the same team without Malik Hall, and that makes me side towards just getting the 3 points and keeping it close with Rutgers.
Also, I'll bring one other one up. Just kind of, real bottom of the barrel, but I think it. There's one thing I really enjoy, and that's Southland overs occasionally. Incarnate Word, Houston Christian. I've said before, Houston Christian's the worst defense in America. They're also good generally for 80. Incarnate Word's actually pretty good. They play pretty fast, and I feel like they can score the basketball a little bit. Look, anybody can score against Houston Christian. I'm just going to kind of assume that this one's up and down, kind of a transition battle. You're never probably on the wrong side of playing overs in this conference, are you?
No, especially with Houston Christian. Although one of my favorite bets today is an under in this league, but it's a team that's new to the league, Texas A&M Commerce. They're playing slow this year. So that's the one I took. But
it's hard to play unders with New Orleans, though.
Yeah, unfortunately. Houston Christian, though, is their defense is the definition of a layup line. It's like, go ahead, score. We're fine with it.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought. I mean, that just one that kind of jumped out and is kind of interesting to me. I'll probably have a little play on that. I like Southland overs. I like Sela overs as well. They play a lot of high-scoring games. Jim Root, good to see you. Real quick, Minnesota, Purdue. Any big number there?
I'm waiting on what's up with Jamison Battle. He had like a back issue last game. I don't know for sure if he's going to play or if he's full strength. If he's in, I think it's a little too high, and Minnesota's actually been a little more competent lately. But if he's out, I'll probably sit it out. So keeping an eye on Battle. I don't think Purdue's going to do this like monster 20-point road wins. I just don't see that happening in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I'm not in love with their guard play. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. All right, Jim, good to see you as always. Go check Jim Root out on Twitter at Second Chance Points. You can see that in his name there. And also check out the Three Men Weave. By the way, real quick before you go, fuck that bullshit-ass list that was put out earlier. Okay, there was several people that were not on it, including me. Listen, let me say something. I like Brandon Walker, but why the fuck is he on that list? Brandon Walker doesn't bet. He's a college football guy. Put him on a college football list. Casey Smith, love her as well. She'll tell you herself she doesn't play college basketball. She doesn't watch it. Why is Jim Root not on that list? Why is Kai McKeon not on that list? Why is Matt Cox not on that list? Why is Jeff Nadu not on that list? Why are there people not on that list that should be on that list? Shameful. Who is that guy?
This is what Big Game Boomer lives for. He just puts out this half-assed crap and hopes that people click on it and add more comments and stuff to his profile. I feel like that's probably part of it. Is I've never quote tweeted a list of his and said I can't believe this. So I haven't helped him get publicity. So he probably not.
Yeah, I guess I did a disservice by doing that. But I was fuming mad.
You'll be on the next one, made by someone competent. You'll be on that one.
Maybe I should make a list.
There you go.
All right, Jim, good to see you. Thank you for coming on, my friend.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Later. Good to see Jim Root as always. Go follow him on Twitter at Second Chance Points. Three Man Weave doing our thing as always. Matt, Kai, Jim. So yeah, that's the show, guys. To me tonight, I played Indiana plus 6.5, and I played Pacific plus 6.5. I'm gonna hope that a couple of doggies could come in and cash some tickets tonight, and maybe have a winning record tonight after a 1-1 Wednesday. Sorry guys if I'm a little jumbled today. I had a little personal matter I had to deal with earlier, involving an old family member. That's my grandma. She's 96. She'll be 97, and she's old. We got a call this morning that she isn't feeling great. So she's my last living grandparent, and we had a lot of good times when I was a kid. So it was, I was able to go see her today, and she didn't live too far from me. So it's hard. she was always a good woman, and she was always very good to me and my brother and sister. And I miss the old days. You never know what you have until it's gone. The old days that you have when you're a kid. So hopefully she'll power through. Her 97th birthday will be in February 2nd. And for me, I don't talk about this too much, but I never had a relationship with my father's parents. It was just kind of my dad didn't grow up a real good way. So for me, my grandpa and grandma on my mom's side, they essentially raised me outside of my parents. I've talked about my grandpa. He died when I was 18, but he was really my father when I was a kid. My dad was a great dad, but he worked a lot. And on weekends, I would go to my grandpa's house. They lived in a row home in Lancaster City, lived there for 50 years. And he taught me about sports, taught me about college hoops. I remember we would watch, so much CBS college hoops on Saturday and Penn State and all these different teams. And he taught me about all this stuff, and this is what I fell in love with when I was a kid, college hoops. And I remember during the tournament, we would cut the brackets out of the paper and we would fill them in. And, we would get cheesesteaks and we would eat good meals, and they were just really good to me as a kid. And, it's hard, man, seeing, old, people that are old get really old, because I've noticed over the years, my grandma, it's like, she's old, and she can't hear as well. But I will say for her age, she's still pretty sharp. But she's definitely breaking down, and it's hard, because you think about it, before you know it, you're 35 or 40. And, when you're young, your grandparents are old. It's like, well, once you get 30, 35, it's like, well, they're really old, I guess for her, her father was 104. So we have pretty good genes, and at least my mom's side of the family. So, hopefully she makes it through. But, as I told her today, she lived a good life, and she's seen a lot. She was telling me today about, just a quick story before we go. She was telling me today that during the Great Depression, my grandma was 8, 9 years old, and they've lived in the city their whole life, my grandma and grandpa. And she would tell me that during then, there were so many more homeless people than you would think, right? You'd have a lot of railroad bums and people like that, people that would jump on trains and stuff. And she said that back then, they would put a red X on your house, and that would signify that you were welcoming homeless folks to have dinner with you or a meal with you. And my grandma said that her father and mother would cook a bunch of food, and the bums would always come to their house and eat in their backyard. And she said they would feed them, and it was just something that everybody did. You were very kind to people because everyone was going through a tough time, right? And some people had a little bit more than others, but for the most part, people were struggling. And you think about that today, and we don't do that anymore, do we? We don't. I'm sure there are plenty of people that help, but we don't do it enough. And kind of an amazing story. She told me many stories that are really fascinating. Obviously being that old, you see so many things, but yeah, so we'll see. Hopefully she pushes through. But as we know, it's part of life, I guess. She lived a good life, so we'll see what happens. But thank you for the kind words, everybody. Thank you for coming in, as always. I appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon. In fact, we'll be here tomorrow. Pretty short show, to be fair. Not going to have much tomorrow. It'll probably be a quick show. We have a little MAC basketball, couple of games as well. And no surprise, Josh B is not reading the room real well. But listen, Josh, I feel like there's a time and place for everything. I know you're trying to just be, level-headed and have some fun, but time for everything. All right, I'm out. I'll see you all later. Have a great evening. Let's grab a couple of the winners tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. Thank you for watching. Go check out Money Shots too. Did that earlier with Megan and Stephen Che. We talked a little NFL, a little NBA, and some other things as well. So go check that out as well. I'll check you all later. See ya.